Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders and investors to help you scale your business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is a very special one. It is his round 2 on the show. I've been checking, and the last time Miguel has been on the show has been in the episode 86. That was released in the 22nd of September of 2019. So more than 3 years ago. And it's incredible how time flies. It seems that I've been speaking with you, I would say last year or so, or even 1 year and a half. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome you again. The name of my guest today is Miguel Arias, the general partner at KFUND. Miguel, welcome back to the show.
It's so good to be here. 3 years, my goodness. A lot of things happened in the meanwhile.
And last time,
pandemic happened in the meanwhile. Yeah,
exactly. That was what happened. And sometimes we forget kind of 2020 and 2021, and that's why it seemed it was last year that you have been here, but not. It was 3 years ago.
My goodness. Yeah.
And at the time you were at Telefonica, and we kind of also covered a little bit of your differentiation because you served in the startup scale up world as an angel. At the time you were going into the corporate world, and now you are in the venture capitalist seat, so which makes you super special because you have been across you have been across all the seats in the innovation ecosystem, in the tech ecosystem. But it's better than me presenting you if you would give just an overview for the ones who are listening you for the first time. Who is Miguel?
Yeah, when I hear you talking, I realize I'm getting old. I mean, it's quite a few things happen.
Both of us.
Yeah, almost 20 years have gone by. So I've been in the ecosystem almost forever now, right? I mean, first as an entrepreneur, my first company was a webcasting and virtual events company that was before the pandemic or before Zoom. So which was acquired by On24, which is now in NASDAQ. It's a webcasting company. And after that, then I joined Carto as COO, which became a more well-known story around enterprise software and location intelligence. We have raised $100 million so far by Insight or Axel and Cecil Ventures. So a different game, right? From initial web internet company at the first days of the internet in Spain into a pure enterprise SaaS scale up with big funding in the US. I had to learn how to be both American and travel bi-weekly to New York from Madrid, which is hard. And after that, I mean, I was the COO, and the COO role is to do what the CEO doesn't want to do. That's the job description. I did that for a few years. And the role was also to hire all the American VPs, right? I mean, you're growing and you're hiring people who are more experienced and more senior than yourself to do the job. And at some point, I thought I wanted to do something else. So I looked around and I got a very great role at Telefonica to be the responsible for entrepreneurship globally, which meant all the projects that Telefonica had around WIDA, Open Future, all the seed investments. And it was a great gig for somebody who had never worked in a corporate before. So I did that for 4 years, but you know how I am. I was thinking about what's the next thing for me after these 4 year cycles is somehow something that I somehow makes me want to change. And then last year, I decided to change gears and I became a venture capitalist. I joined KFUND, which is a very well-known seed stage management company in Spain. And we launched the first early growth fund for the region, so which is called Midwin, which is a 250 million euro fund. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. So, but now learning how to be a venture capitalist. Yeah.
Sounds great, and I think that's a great point to go forward. Also introducing the fund that you are serving today as a general partner. So, what is kind of the thesis of KFUND? A little bit the history, or what founders can expect from KFUND.
Yeah, I mean, we love to say in KFUND that the firm is bigger than the fund, right? So, but KFUND started with a seed stage fund, right? A 50 million euro fund in 2016, and it was founded by Iñaki Arrola, who was the founder of Coaches.com, and Karina Spilka, who was the CEO of a big bank here, ING Direct. So they got together, launched the seed stage fund, and which worked very well. Actually, we have companies there like Factorial, which became a unicorn a few years ago, or Exotica or Urbanitae. And so that evolved with the ecosystem. Then they launched another seed stage fund, successor of the previous one, called K2. So it was very creative, K1 and K2, and doing similar things, right? I mean, checks between 200K to 2 million euros in seed stage software companies mostly, and also mostly in Spain, but over time also in Europe or in places where we had some kind of access, right? And that kept on working and growing. And we also launched a fund of funds together with Bankinter and Martin Barsaski, so to invest also in the best funds in the US, which gives us a lot of best practices and how things are being done in the US, right? And then last year we saw there was a big gap in the market around early growth, right? The Series A, actually more B, in the market, when companies were growing, having some traction already and going international, there was no fund here that could then write a check or 5 to 10 million euros, right, in one single ticket. You have to have a quite big fund to do that, right? You need to have a 100 million euro fund at least. So there were none. So most of the best deals were taken by the Anglo-Saxon funds, which is good. I mean, it's okay, but you had the Tigers, the Patus, the Insights doing many deals. The ecosystem was booming. With strong maturity of funders, maturity of seed stage investors, and maturity of technologies, but there was a lack of that kind of funds, right? And with a strong sense of purpose too, not only of opportunity. We know for a fact, and it has happened the same in Germany or France or the Nordics, when there is a local growth fund, there is more local wealth and local job creation happening, right? I mean, so of course it's about cooperating also with the big funds in the US and the UK, but you can help to ensure that the company grows more locally and grows also more with the local corporates and players. So there was the idea, and we launched that last year. And when you are doing these kind of funds, where you're in the middle between the seed stage funds and the big growth funds, you're in the middle of a sandwich, right? So you need to have a very strong differentiator. If not, you're going to be pressed by the two sides of the sandwich. So the idea around that, and I strongly believe in differentiators for everything you do, for the startups, the corporates, and also the fund, is we are a fund of operators. So I'm doing this with my previous colleague at Carto, and also at my previous company, Master Sergio. So he's the other partner at the fund with me. So first, it's a fund of operators. So people who understand with deep intimacy how founders feel and what are the challenges they're going to be experiencing to grow the company internationally, right? So not financial people, but really deep operators. And the other point I think is very important is that these companies, scale-ups, which have traction, what they need is access to revenues. They need more revenues because they already have proven some kind of market fit. So we think distribution channels are critical for that. And I've learned in my time in Telefonica that corporates can be a great distribution channel. Not so much for startups because they're too small and it's hard to scale, but for a scale-up who has their own muscle, who is riding their own wave, there the corporate can really help to make this on steroids, right? And so we decided that the fund was going to have a lot of corporate LPs in different verticals. So we've got Telefonica as anchor, we've got VVA as a bank, we've got Unir for EdTech, Satec for integrations, Coren for food tech. So many corporates in different verticals, which actually enable different kind of distribution channels.
Sounds great. So you have the differentiation in mind, and the positioning very well defined, which is really important in any table of the tech ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem. As we were discussing, you have been almost in every seat of the innovation ecosystem. You are even connected with EA, a famous business school based in Madrid. So even as a teacher, teaching entrepreneurship as an operator. So what are some of your lessons of being, or some of your experience, some points that you'd like to share for being a founder, being an operator, being a corporate leader, being also a corporate VC, now a venture capitalist, a teacher, so many hats in the ecosystem. So what are some of your experience that you'd like to highlight during your career?
Yeah, thinking about the three key roles, right? As operator, as corporate executive, and now as venture capitalist, I think each of them are working with the same product, the startup, right? But very differently. When I was an operator as a COO, I think the most relevant thing that I was thinking about is you have to focus, right? And your biggest asset is the sense of urgency, because sense of urgency, the fact that if you don't do things quickly, brings alignment. So there is no discussion around what are your KPIs, or that's not in my remit. It doesn't matter, because you either die or survive.
Right.
That incredible and beautiful alignment, which is fed by the sense of urgency, is something that I remember fondly, because that really helps you to move forward quickly, right? So that's as an operator. When then you move to the corporation, it's different, right? I mean, there is a lot of things to be done, and you work a lot, right? It's not that, but alignment from what you think needs to be done and what the corporation thinks that needs to be done can be different, right? They can differ. So you need to also understand something which I didn't know so much about, which is the importance of socializing things. You need to make sure, since it's not about dying or surviving, but you can survive in many different ways. You need to socialize projects and how you're going to be building stuff with other members of the wider corporation, and that's something I learned, and which then means a much bigger overhead. But on the plus side, the scale and the resources are incredible, right? I mean, I joke, well, I don't joke. I was so much more handsome when I was in the corporation. Now it's gone, because people were really talk to me, and they were like to listen to me, and now not anymore, So I'm the same Miguel. I'm back to the same Miguel now. So that's that. And now as a VC, there are like a few different feelings I have. The first one is a strong imposter syndrome, right? Because you never know if you are doing it right. You never know if you do exact things, because it's not like one activity leads to a specific outcome. And outcomes take many, many years to happen, right? And actually, the ones doing the heavy lifting are the entrepreneurs. You are just there asking how you can help and trying to really be supportive. But for an operator, which would love to have, again, the hands on the wheel, it's a strange feeling. That's one, right? And the second is your fear of missing out. FOMO is so much bigger. When you are in the startup, you have no FOMO, because you are just executing and fighting dragons. You cannot think about FOMO. You're not missing anything, because that's the battle. That's the only thing that matters. When you're in a corporation, you could always say, "Oh yeah, I could not do that deal, or that didn't happen." But how could I? I'm the corp, so it's okay for me to not be all the tables, Now it's all on me, on us, on the team, right? If we lose a deal, if something goes wrong, there's no protection. So that's a hard feeling.
So it takes, what you are saying as a venture capitalist, it takes some time to understand if you are good at that job or not, right? But
it's even worse. The mistakes happen early on, and you're gonna think that you're really bad at it very early on. Yeah.
Right, and it makes sense, right? Because again, we in the venture capital world, we are looking for the outliers. So you will fail all the time. You will fail much more than what you will then the bets that you will do right. So it's normal that 90% of the time we are wrong, and we need to be comfortable with that, which is not an easy mindset. And I think we also leverage that from the founder perspective, but hopefully we are right more than 10% of the time. but I think that you also take it from the founder mindset in a certain way. I think more the resilience, right? The capacity to step up after every single defeat or every single lesson that we learn along the way. But I think I can almost understand. I've never been in your position as venture capitalist, that given the math and the numbers, it makes sense that you will fail even more than as a founder. And it can give it, if we are not psychological strong, and even if we are psychological strong, let's also be careful with the message that we are sending out there in a world where mental health is so important. We really need to be very well surrounded to not feel a failure, and it's normal for every human being. But when it becomes too much, it starts affecting our own life, our professional life, our personal life, and I think that's sometimes we don't talk too much about also the VC seat. We think much more about the founder seat in that perspective, and it's all human beings, right?
Oh, I mean, most of the challenges of the VC job are psychological. How you work within a partnership, which is different than working in a corporation with a strong hierarchy. How you manage FOMO, right? How you manage the early mistakes. How you manage your own ego and the ego of others. How you were able to be a great coach and mentor, but not stepping in the toes of the entrepreneurs. It's about being a chief psychologist. So absolutely, having a lot of thought around how you feel about the things you're doing, it's super relevant.
Yeah, and something that also takes a lot of energy out of the VC position is saying no all the time to founders who are giving their lives for something that they believe in, and again, it's even more than 90% of the time.
We are telling founders to persevere, right? So they are usually coming back and say no, but when you say no, you really meant no, or maybe you meant no, maybe, and you never. And when you say no to a founder, you have no clue, right? You do your analysis, you try to build your conviction, but you don't know how the future is going to play out. So we try to be very humble when we say no to founders, and saying, hey, I mean, I wish you lots of success, and I could be completely wrong, right? I mean, we don't know.
Right. And from a psychological point of view, again, you have been on the founder, on the operator position, and it helps you to empathize with the person that is another side of the table. But sometimes you have seen that so many times that you can kind of leave the situation and again, and it can also have a toll on you, and especially the hard times, and it happens all the time. I would say in almost every stage of building a startup, it can be also a strong emotional toll also for the coach and for the advisor. And as a venture capitalist, sometimes you are also doing that position and trying to be impartial in the relationship, because there is always conflict of interest. Of course, you want the startup to succeed and the funds to succeed, and you also need to understand how you will invest your time according to the chances or odds of success of the different members of the portfolio. Are you able to block kind of the negative emotional energy at this time, or do you think that you still need to work a little bit more on that?
I am a newbie. I cannot, right? I mean, I fully feel it, and I get too involved, and the bad news, I feel them as very personal, and I think it's all my fault. And so there's a strong learning, as you said, to be made there. You need to manage your own portfolio of emotions so that you can also balance it a bit. But when you start, you cannot. I was remembering now, there is a great story by Borges. It's called El Inmortal, the Immortal, right? Mm-hmm. And it's about people who drank some water and they become immortals. And then since they're going to feel all the good things and all the bad things in their lives, all of it's going to happen to them because they are immortals, right? At infinity, everything's going to happen to you. So at some point, they don't care anymore, right? They become troglodytes, because why would you make any effort, or why would you have any emotion if in an infinite amount of time, everything's going to happen to you, all the good and all the bad? So at the point, the moral story here is that you end up having no feelings and no empathy. And at some point, VCs could become immortals because they see all these deals. They are not exactly involved. They are betting on portfolios. So all the good news, yeah, okay, we've seen this before. All the bad news, yeah, okay, we've seen this before. Actually, when the VCs become immortals, they talk in plural. We have seen things before, right? It's like at some point, right? So I don't want to be one of those people, right? I want to feel. I want to be involved. I want to have pizza at night with entrepreneurs and supporting them.
Yeah. Just asking that because also as an advisor, as a coach, after 10 years, I'm still working on that, and I'm not successful.
It doesn't get any better.
Okay. So I still feel the ups and downs. Maybe I don't feel the up so up and the down so down, or the high so high and the low so low, but I still feel the emotional roller coaster as we see our portfolio succeeding or having our time. And as we know, there is always so many hard times to go through. So okay, perfect. And so there is something that you also have a lot of experience, which is an interesting regional coverage. You said that you have been traveling a lot from Madrid to New York, an European experience also with Telefonica, and now with KFUND, also with some news. You are also exposed to Latin America. What are some of the insights, or what, especially from emerging markets to more developed or more mature ecosystem? Let's not call developed or non-developing. So, what are some of your insights that you are seeing in terms of the evolution of the ecosystems in Europe and LATAM?
Yeah. I mean, before I joined Telefonica, I had little exposure to the LATAM ecosystem, right? I was mostly doing Europe to US, as all of us are doing, right? From every country, we're trying to see how we can tackle the US market.
Exactly.
If you have a strong tech differentiator, why wouldn't we, right? It's a bigger market, there's more buying power, why wouldn't we go there, right? So everybody's just focused into looking into the US.
Even LATAM.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, that's the case, right? So when I joined Telefonica and I was exposed to all these great places in LATAM, and we did many investments, right? Over my 4 years, more than 50 investments in LATAM. I was amazed by the quality of the founders and the depth of tech expertise of the founders. What was still lacking, which was also a bit the case in Spain or in Portugal, where we needed more profiles with business acumen around scaling up company, right? And that has changed a lot over the last years. Now there are more and more unicorns in the region, so more executives or VP of product or VPs of growth and sales who have lived these hyper growth stories in the region, or also in the US and then came back, or in Europe and came back. So I saw a tremendous evolution of the ecosystem, and I was always saying, I mean, for me, the Brazilian ecosystem has nothing to envy for any ecosystem in Europe, and in some cases even some of the ecosystems in the US, right? Around fintech, of course not, right? So I was surprised about the talent in LATAM, the sophistication, and then the access, right? The access to markets, the access to people, to corporates. So the thing that I learned is that more and more we're going to be seeing founders and companies from LATAM who are able to come to Europe and not the other way around, right? I mean, before there was all the Spanish companies going into LATAM and trying to make a dent in the market. Now we see companies like Gympass or many others who are able to go the other way around. And what I'm trying to teach now the entrepreneurs is that it doesn't need to be always just the US as the key market. You could be thinking that you can go from Brazil or from Colombia into Spain, into Portugal, use that as your entry door into Europe. And then there might be a less competitive situation where you can grow your businesses, you learn, because you really know how to do multi-country, right? In Pan-LATAM is not one region, right? It's like you have learned how to do 3-4 different countries, then you can use those learnings to do then 3, 4, 5 different countries in Europe. And that will make you so much stronger when you have to conquer the US market, right? So, and for that bridge, I think corporates can be a great passage. We see that the Telefonicas, the BBVAs, which have presence in both places, and many other companies also from LATAM, they could act as this distribution channel or bridge for the scale-ups on both sides to work together. And that's a big learning from them.
Yeah, and I would say that especially for the ones in the Spanish-speaking part of LATAM that need to conquer a lot of markets to be able to have a larger market. For the ones who are coming out of Brazil, it might be a little bit more difficult to have a global mindset, kind of the issues that we see with American entrepreneurs, that European entrepreneurs and Spanish-speaking LATAM based entrepreneurs also are able to have because they need out of the necessity to learn how to open new markets very early on.
I agree, but I have to say that more and more we see the Brazilian entrepreneurs who are looking from a Pan-LATAM perspective, right? And just after Brazil, they're thinking about opening offices in Mexico City or Bogota. Then once they have that experience, I think they're ready to go to Europe. Yeah.
Good, great point. And I know there is a topic that you are very passionate about, and of course that's the reason why you are also in the tech ecosystem, which is the power of how tech or how enabling tech can be applied to any vertical, and how it can help to solve a lot of challenges in the world. If you'd like to share some thoughts about that topic that I know that you really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, actually, for our early growth thesis, we do that, right? We try to invest in companies which are having a strong differentiator around enabling tech. What do I mean by enabling tech? I mean the platforms where you can create an infrastructure or a platform infrastructure, and others can build their business models on top of you, right? I mean, maybe you give them a service through APIs, or you have an SDK. So it's a one deeper level on the new fabric of the future internet, right? And those platforms can be very different. It could be a platform of sensors, right? IoT sensors which are deployed, so you can then use those sensors as a platform and having them be accessible via APIs for an insurance company or for a government or for for different kind of business models. A platform could be blockchain as a platform to enable, for example, let me give you examples to give you an idea, right? To enable
absolutely.
A visual identification of users of an e-commerce sites, of many e-commerce sites, and then the blockchain can enable that as a platform. Or you could have connectivity or edge computing as a platform. You could be thinking about AI as a platform or data analytics as a platform, right? So what I truly believe is that we are seeing now a strong maturity of these tectonic plates of the internet of the future, which will enable a lot of new different business models. And what we see now is like a kind of a merge or a blurriness on the boundaries. It's not anymore around just, I don't know, a healthcare business or just a mobility business, but you see healthcare and mobility merging thanks to data analytics into new different kind of business models. Or you see that the work at home and the work at the office is also blurring, which means you need to have different kind of cybersecurity platforms. In a way, I think that this idea of just having verticals to define things are something that I don't believe so much. I think there is a lot of things to be made at the boundaries between verticals, and that's my bet.
Right. This is interesting. It's kind of the discussion that we have all the time is as the company scales, how are we able to bridge the different functions? Here is how are we able to bridge the different technologies to serve a certain purpose? not around a specific vertical, but across a specific problem
Across exactly.
that we want to solve. So again, it's and the typical discussion. This is not about the technology. It's how do we build a solution to solve a problem using the tool that is the technology. And the same in the company perspective is how do we come all together to solve the problems of the customer and the problems of the team, and not who is right from the marketing or the sales or the finance or the product or the tech perspective. I think that's a good analogy to make.
And don't get me wrong, I do think there can be great business to be made with one single product or with one marketplace or one e-commerce site, right? That there could be great financial business models, but for me, thinking about the companies that are going to shape the future, I prefer to invest on this infrastructure layer.
Got it. And how do you see the future of that? What do you think would be the new categories or the new winners, or at least what are your assumptions and your thesis about the future in this regard, right?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, we are now, I would say we are now living an inflection point. Look what's going to happen in the last weeks with generative AI, right? I mean, there is a new breakthrough almost every day happening right now. So I do think that we're going to see all these technologies embedded in our daily lives. We're going to see AI embedded in almost every process that we live, from our daily life outside of work, and also from, in a way, how could you say this? It's like a co-pilot for everything, right? There's going to be co-pilots around us for our right? At the same idea, I think we're going to be having ubiquitous wearables and devices which are going to be connected and intelligent, right? And so it's going to make the co-pilots be with us all the time, okay? And that's going to then create enormous amount of data, which is going to be used then for further optimization and further analysis. So that's things that I think are going to happen no matter what, right? And I do think that with the new 5G and connectivity and computing, we're going to see how VR and AR start to be also something we see in our day-to-day. I'm not such a big believer in all these metaverses where, I don't know, we're going to be living just within the metaverse, right? I don't think it happens so much, but that we're going to be having devices with strong AR capabilities, which are going to help us through those copilots. That I do think. As you see, everything again blurring and merging. Yeah,
merging, exactly. It's kind of what you were saying. It's not anymore the discussion. I still remember I was leading a branding agency at the time, and we were discussing should we focus on being very strong at graphic design, or should we also start hiring people from a digital perspective? Will marketing be traditional marketing or offline marketing or online marketing? And we all know what is the answer today. It's always, as you said, a blended, and the same about should we go to the office or should we stay remote? Even if we work remotely, we need to meet and to gather at least once a quarter, be all together. And of course, those meetings will be different. Maybe the strategic or the operational meetings we can do online, but then those meetings are much more just to get to know each other, to have fun together, to understand the personal part that we miss not being in the same office and having those random conversations when we are waiting for the coffee at the coffee machine. And sometimes, of course, we also talk about some issues that we are facing around business, but a lot of times it's when we get to understand how are your kids, what is going on, what are your hobbies, and that's the way people connect a little bit more. I think there is also something interesting before going into the last segment of the show to cover, which is the typical mistake that we do. I think that we also did this a lot in the past in Europe. I think that we are getting better at that. But I think that in LATAM, there is still, we still see this happening, especially for foreigners that go into LATAM to build their companies, which is to try to apply a benchmark from the US and think that it will work in LATAM. So, and as you were speaking about the importance of having the infrastructure to scale, sometimes the problems that we solve in LATAM might be much more fundamental before going into too much to a sophisticated to a certain level of sophistication. Sorry about my English today. And do you see the same kind of issues about how dangerous it is to apply a US benchmark directly into Europe or directly into LATAM? And second, the difference of problems that needs to be addressed in LATAM compared to Europe and the US.
Yeah, it's a valid point, right? I mean, if you're talking about infrastructure and we're talking about this new infrastructure, but there's a lack of the previous basic infrastructure, then what are we talking about, right? If there's no connectivity at all, how are we talking about edge computing? If there is no devices, how are we talking about smart IoT grids, right? It can't happen. We need, so that's true. That's true. And it's clear that you need to understand the difference in LATAM to do these kind of things at scale. So I agree on that. To be on the plus side, adoption of new technologies by the population in LATAM, which is younger, it's incredible. It's much quicker than it's happening in other places, right? So
we can see WhatsApp, for instance.
You might leapfrog even one generation, considering that, right? So I would say there are some drawbacks. You need to be aware, to your point. I mean, you cannot do things in LATAM from the outside. We have now super happy to have Gustavo Rivas as a new venture partner in the region. You need to be present. You need to understand the particularities of LATAM, not as a region, but as every single country.
Right.
Of course, there are things that are not there, so you cannot just create, I don't know, as we said, right, a network of smart drones if there is not even the basic connectivity. So that's clear, but you have a mature, sophisticated population, which is avid to take on new products. And that's something that some places you don't see in Europe the same, right? So pluses and minuses, yeah.
Good point. And it's good to see also more global entrepreneurs also trying to tackle, should I leverage the opportunity in Europe or the US or LATAM, even Southeast Asia? I think it's also fine to see, and I still see some Europeans also going into Southeast Asia to start a business. And it's great to see this multiculturality and really being more, I would say, I'm not finding the word, but a little more intentional. That's the word, intentional, about deciding what market to go first, to build first a local player, then a regional player, and finally a global player.
Agreed. Always with the global mindset, but in a step approach. Yeah.
Exactly. With kind of what I like to do, the vision reverse engineering exercise, coming from the long term to the midterm and to the short term, and start building the blocks. And of course, understanding that we need to approach it with flexibility, because we don't know what will be in the next 10 years, but we always need to be adapting the long, the mid, and the short term as we progress.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go into the last segment of the show that we didn't add 3 years ago when you joined us for the episode 86, for the ones who would like to see or listen to that episode.
How old we became in 3 years, right?
Let's see. I am sure that a lot of the insights that we shared there are still very relevant today. I don't know. Good point. I should have checked before mentioning so many times that episode. I think that Miguel, you will listen to it again. Okay. So let's go to the first one. So if you would have the opportunity to meet Miguel, and let's maybe make it a little bit shorter in time, at the beginning of your journey as a venture capitalist, what advice would you offer to your younger self?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I mean, I think one important piece that I learned later on is the relevance of the networks of trusted peers, of building your own tribe. You know, that I would have told that young, unexperienced Miguel, build your tribe, find who are people that that you can rely on, that you trust, that will help you when you fall to go step back in, right? And then that will help you grow. And that I learned later on that was so important.
Good point. The second, what are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
Well, it's fully a work in progress, right? So the journey is still going on. But there's one thing that I as we discussed, I changed so much, right, in my life. I changed dramatically in many times. So in those moments of change, a thing happened, and it happened consistently. So this is the beautiful thing for me is that I got messages or letters, actually handwritten letters from previous team members, right, about the impact that my management style has had on them, right? I mean, like, I always think that I manage by service. So the idea that it's not that you are the boss or that you, I don't know, achieve the goal, but you were able to have a more of a lasting effect on how people see how they relate to others, how things can be done, more from a cultural perspective. And I always found this very, I don't know, reassuring, right? You never know if you're doing right. And then when you leave and you're not anymore the boss, so they can actually say whatever they want or nothing. Exactly. And then they take the effort to tell you something. And in that sense, I think that's relevant, right? So that's one thing. And thinking about another thing is that I like to do things that matter. And now more than ever, I'm a bit concerned about what my grandkids might say. I mean, I have now 2 girls, so if they have kids at some time, and my grandkids in 20, 30 years asking me, Grandpa, I mean, you had the privilege to be able to do whatever you wanted at the time. What did you do? I mean, did you give money to somebody to do a new app? Or did you have somebody to tackle the key challenges, mostly around climate emergency, also around the energy transition? Did you do anything around that? So I hope that in 20, 30 years, I can tell them that I did. I don't know.
Wow, this is a great question to add to this last segment. So, good one, Miguel. Worst advice ever received?
I got many bad advice, but there's one that I heard a lot, and which is very dangerous, is the idea that entrepreneurs need to persevere. You have to persevere. That's and it stops there, right? And which means then, I don't know what it means, is like you should just keep on banging your head against the wall for 20 times till your head breaks. And I think that perseverance is relevant. Resilience, and you mentioned this before, is relevant, but it needs to be smart perseverance, right? In a way, you need to be able to learn from what's going on with you, and I need to be able to adapt into that, right? So I think that all these very fundamentalists around entrepreneurship, where they say things are this way and you really have and persevere and never give up. I don't know, mate. At some point, maybe you need to give up and learn what's going on and listen a lot. Yeah.
Another one that I'm still trying to master. So after the not going through the ups and downs so deeply with entrepreneurs, but still keeping that empathy that we were talking about, also understanding when to keep pushing and when to stop and change direction and change gears is such an important skill to master. And finally, resources. Favorite book, business or non-business? You decide.
I'm non-business, because we talk so much about business. I'm a bit
That's true. That's true. It's about getting to know you more on the personal side. That's the purpose of this last segment. Yeah.
So I've 2 books I read lately. I was trying to, as we were speaking, I was trying to look at the English names, but I couldn't find them. So the one is in Spanish. It's called Calle Este Oeste, so Street East West, by Philip Sands, right? About the history of his family in actually Ukraine now, but it was at the time Poland and during the Nazi regime. So it's a very interesting, well-documented story which tells you a lot about the human nature that I like very much. And a very strange book that I read also lately is, and I don't know exactly the title in English again, it's the Things Your Grandkids Should Know, right? By Eels, which is a singer. And it's like in a way an autobiography, written quite weirdly, but it resonates greatly into me about how people react to adversity and how you move on. Very interesting books that I have read lately, which I would love to share.
Super original recommendations. Favorite movie or series?
So on a old movie I watched many years ago, but really had an impact on me. It's Land and Freedom by Ken Loach. It's an oldie but goodie. And I have very little time to go to the cinema now with the girls and everything, but I just saw a movie which was also not a very new one, but I saw this a few weeks ago and I liked it. It's called Beautiful Boy, around a kid which struggles with drug addiction and how his father and mother struggle with that too, but go the extra mile to help. And it's a very interesting movie to watch with your kids when they grow older.
Correct. How old are your daughters?
12 and 10, well, 11 and 10.
Okay, good age. And finally, your favorite podcasts, excluding this one.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So
no conflict of interest.
I'm gonna mention two of them, which I listen to. Well, there's three of them. So one is the 20-minute VC, Harry Stebbings. That's everybody that one, but I like it. I like the style. I mean, I like very much the in-depth analysis the folks at Acquire.fm do, right? About all the really interest stories on how companies get acquired and why. I love it. Yeah. It's interesting. And I like to listen from time to time to I remember the name of the podcast by Malcolm Gladwell about the weird things that happen in the world, and I think it's very funny.
Great. Miguel, thank you so much for joining us for the second time. It was a pleasure, and it is incredible to see how much you have achieved in the last 3 years.
4 years, we have to do the third time.
Exactly. Hopefully earlier, because you have achieved in 1.5 years the same that you achieved in the last 3 years.
I don't think it's a long-term game.
Exactly, I agree. Thank you, Miguel, again for joining us, and to our community. We keep bringing you the best of the best to make your life a little bit easier on this amazing journey of going from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, and 10 to 100. See you soon, and keep scaling.